It is really a big honor to be having this kind of meeting with all of you. So thank you very much. We are going to be addressing today clause 6.1 in terms of the high level structure of international standards organizations standards. So we are going to be addressing 6.1 with a practical focus on addressing risks and opportunity. So this is recorded, so you will get it within the next, I think tomorrow afternoon, it will be on YouTube as well. So firstly, the agenda. Who is CREST Advisory Africa? By now, people that is attending this webinar on a bi-weekly basis, they will know what is CREST Advisory Africa. Then we are going to have two sections actually, understanding the high-level structure of clause 6.1 and what is needed there, and then a practical implementation model for clause 6.2. And I will go through our practical examples there as well. Practical risk register, a practical reporting, a practical control environment, etc. there, and then questions, and then contact us. So who are we? My name is Nico Snyman. I'm the founder and CEO of CREST Advisory Africa. I have founded CREST on the 13th of June 2014. So we are 12 years old this year, going on to 13. So we are contracted with 3 certification bodies, namely the PCB, that is on people certification, that is ISO 17024 of the standards, and then MSECB, that is on ISO 17021-1 on management systems, as well as DQS, that is certified through DAX in Germany for ISO management system certifications. So we are doing various certifications for the MSECB as well as DQS, and DQS we are also doing training for them as well. So CREST has got 6 specific services. The first one is training, second one advisory service, then I want to go to auditing services, then our Isolytics GRC software, and then going over into international ISO certification audits, and then leadership development. What is very important is that if you're looking at these standards, all of them we are doing within training, advisory service. So we are training people as lead implementers as well as lead auditors. Secondly, we are implementing the same standards from ISO 31000, 18788, 22301, etc., up to the newer standard that we've got is 42001, that we are doing the training as well as advisory services there. We are implementing or auditing services as well internally as well as externally. And then we've got our Isolytics GRC software that I will also show you within our training or within the webinar that we've got now. And then we are also doing international certification audits on those standards that is listed there, from 18788, 22301, 9001, 42001. I was honored to be doing, I want to say, my first ISO 42001 certification audit in Zimbabwe with the company there, and I think they have already heard that they are going to be certified, one of the first companies on the African continent to be certified in ISO 42001. And then leadership development, we are working very, very strongly with the development of EXCOs, of boards, of leadership structures, of executives, in terms of not only ISO, but also a complete holistic approach there. So understanding of the high-level structure with a specific focus on clause 6.1, actions to address risks and opportunities. And please look there at the 2 things that is mentioned there, risks and opportunities. it is not only risk management, it is also opportunity management, because each risk has got a flip side, and that flip side is opportunity. The question is, are your company ready to actually address the opportunity or take the opportunity, or are you just looking at the risks that you are not even looking at the opportunities? So very important there. What I'm talking about, and I will give you the example of what I experienced with ISO 42001 in Zimbabwe in terms of this. So practical focus on clause 6.1. So why is clause 6.1 a turning point in ISO? Very important question there, because clause 4 and 5 sets the strategic and leadership foundation. And guys, really, if you are implementing any ISO system, don't overlook or take clause 4 and 5 lightly. Clause 4 and 5 are your foundation cornerstones of every standard, because clause 4 understands your strategy, where you are going to. Clause 5 is about leadership and how you are taking that environment and that you are going forward. Clause 6.1 is where ISO makes a decisive shift from understanding and intent to action and control. How do you do it practically? How do you link the strategy with operations? What is bringing that close? And that is risk management, risk and opportunity management. So clause 6.1 answers the question auditors, boards, and executives all care about. That is the following. Given our context, clause 4, our stakeholders, context is 4.1, stakeholders is 4.2, and objectives, the strategic objectives, that is in 5.1. What could go wrong? What could go right? And what are we doing about it? So if you're looking at all of this, this is where you are actually analyzing your strategy, where you are analyzing your objectives, where you are saying, but this is our our route of implementation. This we cannot do. This is really a difficult thing that is outside of the regulations. But what can go wrong? What can go right? And what are we doing about it? And this clause is the embodiment of risk-based thinking. And since 2015, risk-based thinking has been the primary driving force for any ISO standard. It is not paper-based anymore, or supposed to be paper-based. It is supposed to be linking it to your risk, linking it to your context, linking it to your addressing your stakeholders. How are your objectives performing? And that is one of the most important evolutions in modern ISO standards. Really, that is where we as auditors were actually looking previously to, yes, do you have that? Do you have that? Do you have that? Do you have that? Okay, yes, you have got it. The question is now, how do you actually practically go and do it? Go and implement it. Go and drive your strategy and your leadership. So what clause 6.1 requires in plain, simple language is, firstly, it asks from you as the organization to consider the issues identified in clause 4.1. Now, those issues could be supply chain issues. Those issues could be supplier issues. Those issues could be legislation. Those issues could be internal culture. Those issues could be the global economy that is impacting on your own environment. I have addressed this in very detail in the first webinar that we did on 4.1. Then, secondly, consider the requirements identified in clause 4.2. Now, those requirements are your stakeholders. Who is your stakeholders? It is not only your board. It is not only the regulators. It is legislation. It is international legislation. It is what is your clients asking from you? How are they actually doing what they need to? How are you doing what you need to do to comply with their needs and their expectations? Because that is the requirements. And requirements is usually law, regulations, standards, uh, um, su supply chain contracts. It's a contract. It's a contract that you've got with everybody else, with a supplier, etc. Determine the risks and opportunities that could affect the intended outcomes of what you've got there. Prevent undesired effects. Now, undesired effects, we are usually putting them into a basket of that is business continuity. No, undesired effects is happening every day. Really, it's happening every day. Whether it is a business continuity event, whether it is some other event, undesirable or undesired effects is as plain as you were supposed to be doing A, B, and C. You have done A and C and not B. You haven't complied with a process and a procedure. Achieve continual improvement. That is the big one that all of us are striving for. How do we continually improve? Because you need to adapt to the market. You need to make sure that what you've got in the market, sorry, I just want to let these people in. So you need to make sure that what you have got in the market, that you are actually adapting to the market and that you are growing within the market. So plan actions to address those risks and opportunities. And those are actually coming from this side here, from 4.1, 4.2, and you will see in your objectives that the objectives is creating your own risk environment there. Integrate and implement those actions into processes. The question is always, if you are talking about risk, we have got risk. Yes, we've got risks. We've got these risks and those kind of risks. The bottom line is, if you don't have objectives, you don't have risks. You can have everything else. You can have hazards and threats and vulnerabilities and everything, but you don't have a risk because you don't have money in the game. You don't have flesh in the game. Your business is not depending on the objectives. And a business without objectives is going nowhere. Really. It is like a boat without a rudder. So integrate and implement those actions into processes and evaluate the effectiveness of those actions. Very important here. Now, I will show you in our risk register and our risk methodology that we are looking at specifically driving risks out of your objectives, whether it is strategic, tactical, operational objectives, and then linking that to your root cause analysis. And out of your root cause analysis, to actually have a process there of analyzing that root cause analysis or contributing factor. We are calling it CFs, contributing factors. Each of them, we are testing that in terms of what is my people controls to manage this? What is my process controls in managing this? What is my system controls in managing it? What is my tools and my technology controls? And that we are calling our P square ST square methodology of control management. And we are listing all of them, and then we are assessing each one of them. And that assessment, that total assessment, is actually giving you your residual risk rating and your exposure, your estimated monetary value. So in short, we identify, assess, act, embed, and review what we need to do and how we are doing it. And we are going constantly back to that as well. ISO does not prescribe how to do risk management. Very, very important there. It does not prescribe how to do risk management. It gives you a guideline in terms of ISO 31000. Yes, the guideline is there. The best practices are there. 31000, the vocabulary is 31073, and the risk assessment methodologies is 31010, 31010. But it is uncompromising that it must be done systematically and you must demonstrate it. You must be able to to have it again and again and come out to the same result, to replicate it over and over again. If you cannot do that, and people doesn't understand that, then you don't have a risk management system at all. So risk-based thinking, what does ISO actually mean by that? So ISO deliberately avoids forcing organizations into a single risk methodology. But guys, if you are looking at ISO and you're adopting ISO, why wouldn't you adopt ISO 31000 or 27005, the risk assessment methodology that is in terms of, and that is in IT risk management? So into a single risk methodology. If you have got a methodology and you can explain it and it makes sense, 100%, and you can have repeatable results of it, fantastic. Now, everywhere where you've got a measuring point, like internal risk, inherent risk rating, or residual risk rating, or internal control effectiveness, or document assurance matrix, or any other kind of matrix, you need to have that methodology documented, and that can work for you proactively. So risk-based thinking means proactive and not reactive. Proactive means we are analyzing what we have to prevent any undesirable outcome, that we can achieve our intended outcomes. Embedded in decision making, very important here. If you're looking at decision making, just look at your risk matrix model. Is your risk matrix model outdated? Is your risk matrix model supporting the board to make decisions, or is your risk matrix model, is that more for the operational risk? And I will show you what I'm meaning by that. And it must be proportionate to risk and applied across the management system. So if you've got one single methodology, that methodology must be applied right through your organization. You cannot have one department that is having their own methodology, and another one is having their own, another one having their own, etc. And eventually you are sitting with so many methodologies that you don't have any methodology. So clause 6.1 is not limited to a risk register. It influences your objectives. Absolutely. Your controls. Absolutely, because you are measuring it. You're measuring it in terms of what we have said here. Evaluate the effectiveness of those actions, and those actions are your controls. Resourcing. Absolutely. Do you have people? Do you have resources? Do you have software that can assist you? Do you have this? Do you have that? What is your resource universe that you are looking at? And this is why, if you're looking at resources, the P square ST square methodology in control management has to do with resources. People resources, process resources, system resources, tools resources, technology resources, and you can go and categorize it as you want further on, and more detail about that. Operational decisions. It needs to make decisions or assist you in making decisions, not only operationally, but also tactically and strategically. Where do I invest my money as a CEO? Where do I put my money in administration? That is, I've got fantastic administration, but my company is dying because I don't have the strategic direction. I am an administrator. Fantastic. Die. Die with all your papers around you. You need to adopt, and you need to drive objectives. Objectives that is growing your company. Why did you start with your company? To deliver a product or a service, not to have an administrative system primarily. Nope, it's not about that. So operational, tactical, and strategic decisions, it need to support that. Inputs to clause 6.1. And this is really, if you followed us from clause 4.1, you will see that we have been talking all the time about this is the input into clause 6.1. So you need to have these documents and this information available that you can analyze it and work with it. Your internal and external issues. That is a whole environment. If you go to ISO 31000 and specifically to ISO 31073, you will get there a whole list of what is the internal context analysis that you need to consider. Each one of them, I think there's about 16 or 20 of them, like governance, your roles and responsibilities, strategies, everything else. 4.2, interested parties. What is their needs and their expectations? What do they want from you? You as a company can do everything, but if your board is not happy, there are going to be conflict. If your regulator is not happy with you, there's going to be conflict. If any other entity that is a stakeholder in your business, or not a stakeholder, an interested party, because interested parties are defined as persons or entity that can be affected by or perceive themselves to be affected by another person or company or organization. So very important what you're looking at in 4.2. 4.3 sets you the boundaries, the perimeters of what is in your scope and what is excluded from your scope. 5.1 is leadership direction, and 5.2 is policy commitments. And actually 5.3 is to do with your resources. What is your roles and responsibilities of your resources that you need to have there? And if these links are not there, we as auditors cannot see that your 4.1 and 4.2 and everything else is impacting into your risk environment. Then you are doing business in this specific environment that is described in your internal and external context analysis. But you are saying that, okay, we have done the work there, but we are totally discarding it. You cannot do that. You've done the work there. You have invested time. You have invested roles and responsibilities and people and funds and money. And now you're saying, no, we are not addressing that at all. We've got our own risk universe. It is not even linked to your objectives. It's just a risk universe. You cannot have that. It needs to be aligned. And guys, we are talking here about ISO. This is not about ISO. I was fortunate to complete my MBA in many years ago in 1999, and one of my majors in my MBA studies was strategic management. And strategic management has got the same kind of thing there. It has got mission or vision, mission, objectives. Out of the objectives, you are doing the internal context analysis, external context analysis with the SWOT analysis. You are doing a PESTEL analysis with people, processes, and all the stuff. And then out of that, you are doing your risk environment. And out of that, you are doing your resources. Now, doesn't that sound very familiar to you? It is 4.1, 4.2, clause 4, clause 5, clause 6 that I've explained out to you. And clause 7 is your resources. It is strategic management. It is not only about compliant to be with ISO. No, that is strategic management. I studied my MBA for that, man. So use it. It is just in a different format or under a different name. So risks versus opportunities. Very important here, because you need to be looking at how can I expand my organization? How can I expand my services? How can I expand X, Y, and Z? If I'm saying to you that the company that I audited now in Zimbabwe for AI for the AIMS AI management system, these guys has already AI only came into effect in 2023, 2024. Their whole company has been changed since last year or this year to be an AI-driven solution for the whole environment. That is opportunities. It was initially a risk. Yo, what do we do with this AI thing? And they've changed it into an opportunity. Now the whole business is about AI. The next 3 or 4 or 5 years is going to be about rolling AI out to everywhere in the country and neighboring countries. So they are at the moment in the forefront of all these things, and they are exploring new markets, just like what we are talking here about market expansion. So risks could be a cyber incident. The opportunity there could be automation. The question is always how, as a business, how do you monetize this? Regulatory penalties, market expansion is the opportunity there. How do you monetize this? How do you make money out of this thing? Services disruption, that is business continuity. The question is your processes optimized? Are you working on an optimal manner with your processes? Skill shortage, upskilling programs. Absolutely. So if you are ignoring the opportunities that is in clause 6.1, it is a weakness. You must actually provide me as the auditor with an opportunity register. This is your risk? Yes, absolutely fantastic. Show me your opportunity register. What is the opportunities that you've got there as well? So practical example of clause 6.1 is in ISO 27001, the context issue is the increase in cybercrime, and the stakeholder need is client data protection. So here is your risk and opportunity. Your risk is your data breach, your phishing, and opportunity there is automation. And the action plans that you are having out of there. So don't always only look at let the top of mind not always look at risk. There need to be somebody else in your team that is looking at the opportunities. Yes, maybe you are this analytical person and compliance person, and you are looking at risks specifically. But you need to have a marketing environment person as well in your team to be saying, but hell, I am seeing this opportunity there. I'm seeing this opportunity there. Just to have a different mindset and thinking as well. So auditors look for logic. Is there logic in your thinking? Do you have the evidence? And we've been talking about evidence for the last few weeks. And evidence comes back to the audit evidence reliability model that you can find on our website under the news and resources under auditing. You will find it there. Audit evidence reliability model. Ownership. If you are just a worker in a company, you don't have actually ownership. If it is not documented in roles and responsibilities and a job description, there's no requirement for you to think further than your job description. And the question here is actually, how can you contribute to the opportunities in this environment? How can you, as a worker that is not thinking further as the job description or the rules of the environment, how can you assist us in breaching assist us in blocking a risk or mitigating a risk? Also then monitoring. Auditors, we are looking for how do you monitor, and I will get to those things. So planning actions, the most common failure points. So firstly, 6.1 requires planned actions, not only intentions. We need to have planned actions. We need to have energy behind the action. Intentions, my friends, the road to heaven is scattered with intentions. Really, there's a lot of letters there to say that I'm intending to do this, intending to do this. It's just lying on the road. It is actually blocking you from getting into heaven. So please do something. Each action should answer what will be done, who will do it, when will it be done, how is success measured, and what happens if it fails. Yes, and audit-friendly audit planning example is here at the bottom. But I will show you our risk register. And all those questions will be answered there. So integrating actions into processes, and this is a non-negotiable. ISO is explicit. Explicit is, I want it, I want to see it, who's doing it, the precise information about what you've got. And actions must be integrated into management system processes. This means that risk controls is embedded into operations. This is why we are looking at the P-square, ST-square methodology to actually say, what do you have there that we can actually assess your control, that we can see how strong is your control, and that we have got a 360 assessment of that specific control. You can be biased and you can think that, wow, this is a 90% effectiveness. And then other people that's actually working with it feels that, oh my goodness, who wasted time on this, on the development of this type of control, because it is not happening. It is not here. It is not working for us, and that for them is a 10%. And then you've got two polars that is actually saying it is working, and we are betting our life on it, and the others is saying, but it is not working. And actions reflected in procedures. Actions. Responsibilities assigned in clause 5.3. This is what I was talking about two slides earlier. And resources allocated in clause 7. A standalone risk register with no operational impact, whether it is in 4, in 5, in 6.2, that is objectives. I will do it in 2 weeks' time. And 7 and 8 is a time wasted risk register, really. It needs to drive the business. It needs to make a difference in your business. So evaluating effectiveness, and this is mostly, or in a lot of risk registers, I've been working with this for the last 10, 15, or in my life for the last 25 years, specifically with risk registers. And this is overlooked. People want to list the controls, but they don't want to assess it, or they want to assess it in an assessment methodology that is actually suiting them. So ISO does not accept we implemented it as sufficient. It must be evaluated. Did the action reduce the risk? Did it enable an opportunity? Did it improve the outcomes? And give me the evidence. And this is in clause 9. Give me the evidence in your KPIs, in your key performance indicators, in your incident trends, in your audit results, in your management review decisions. All of those are giving me the audit evidence of monitoring, measurement, etc. So this evaluating the effectiveness is one of the critical factors. So ISO, clause 6.1 across different ISO standards. So 6.1 is structurally the same in all the standards. Really, it is. It is the risk lens changes only to focus on, if we're talking about quality management, it is quality and satisfaction and customer satisfaction. If you're talking about 27001, that has to do with information security risks. If you're talking about AI management system in ISO 42000, it is about ethical and responsible AI risks. I have seen a lot of people already with AI, with ISO 42000, that has a total different impact on the risk environment, because they are not looking at the ethical and responsible AI risks. They are looking at how can we take advantage of this? How can we use this to actually minimize X, Y, and Z? But the biggest thing there is ethical and responsible AI risks. So this enables one enterprise risk approach supporting multiple standards across all the lines. So nobody can say your risk process is not actually applicable on me. I'm in quality, or I'm in customer satisfaction, or I'm in the mine and you cannot use the same thing what you're using in the bank. It's the same methodology. It is only how do you apply it in your space. The rules of the game is the same. It is like soccer worldwide. You are just playing it on fantastic pitches in Qatar or in Europe or England, or on dirt fields in Africa. It's the same kind of thing. So, common audit findings for clause 6.1. Risks are not linked to the context of or the stakeholders. Actions are not planned or owned. It is just given, yeah, somebody will do it. Opportunities are ignored. There's not even a list of opportunities. And this is opportunities you will see. I am always, if I am auditing you, I'm always looking for what is your strategy in continuous improvement. Because your strategy in continuous improvement in 10.1 is talking about opportunities. That is your opportunity list. You just need to incorporate it. No evidence of effective review. Yes, we will do it once a year, or we will do it every 6 months. Risk registers exist, but not used. It's a paper exercise. Somebody has asked us to actually do this, and yeah, we will do it. But we will do it just to get somebody off our backs. Clear risk and opportunity identification. That is fantastic. Actions planned and implemented. Ownership is assigned. There's no confusion about who owns what. Notable integration into processes. Effectiveness evaluated. Effectiveness is evaluated. Now, guys, here we get to the practical part of it. It is now 14:38. I hope that I can do this before 2 o'clock. If it's not, I will go on until I'm finished. Just for the sake of you have got this record, but let's go here and talk about how do we start with this. I'm going to go to our documents. So firstly, if we are looking at risk management, the start of any risk environment, for people that know risk management, the risk assessment process, the definition of risk assessment is the overall process of risk identification. That is the process of risk identification. The overall process of risk analysis and the overall process of risk evaluation. That is a risk assessment. Those three building blocks is the risk assessment. So what we've got here is risk identification and risk analysis and evaluation, and then we have incorporated the risk treatment plan as well in the same risk register. And this is actually a separate step in the risk life cycle, but we have incorporated that. I just want to, so if we are starting with risk identification, the first stop or the first start that you are starting with risk is not the risk description. It's not here. It is with your objectives. You are starting with clause 5.1 with the strategic objectives. There is the strategic objectives. What is the strategic objectives that you want, that the company needs to grow with? There you are. Out of this, you are going to your tactical objectives. So this is your overall company objective. Then this is your departmental objective, and this is going to be changing. For the same strategic objective, you are going to have in HR another approach, or something that you are looking from HR side to get to the strategic objective. The same as from a safety side, the same as from an IT side. It is going to be different, but all of you are driving the strategic objective. Absolutely. So that is there. Then in your tactical, then you go to your operational or your management systems that you've got there, your quality management system or your operationally, what are you doing with the supply chain in buying things? So what is your, in your management system, what is your specific objectives in driving the management system? I've got here the BCMS, Business Continuity Management System. So what is your objective, your objective in driving the management system? And that you are documenting here, because this is addressing that specific objective, as you can see there, VD1, VD2, or VD 1.1, VD 1.2, etc. And each of those are objectives of the strategy, but here is the objectives of the department. And you can see there as well, what we've done there is having the different environments there, and this is changing as we're going along. The big thing with risk management, if you cannot link your objectives, your strategic objectives that is in 5.1, with the objectives that you've got in 6.2 that we will address in 2 weeks, then you don't have risk, because you are disconnected. You are sitting on a iceberg, and you are waiting for the Titanic to approach you. So these three things are driving each other. This is an input to your tactical. Your operational is the impact to your tactical. Your tactical is an implement is supporting and driving your strategic objectives. So now that out of the way, objectives, then you are going into what is your risk description. And this is all part and parcel of risk identification. What is your risk description? And you are working here with the operational objective, or the BCMS or the ISMS objective that you've got there. What is the opposite of that? The lack of, or the failure of, the energy and utilities in that environment. Now that is your risk, 100%. We agree on that. Okay, it is well defined. You understand that it is linking to your tactical and your strategic objectives. Out of that, what is your identification process to determine what is causing F4? What is causing that? What is sitting behind it? What is the contributing factors? And you list all of them. Root cause 1, root cause 2, or CF1, CF2, CF3, CF4. We have done that in a coding system of CFs. So very important that you are looking at that, because each of them are going to be analyzed here. As you can see there, CFs, that is the analysis of CFs, only of CF1. Then you are starting with CF2, and CF3 is starting on the others below that. And you follow the same structural process to replicate what you have got there. So this is your contributing factors. Then you are looking at your consequences. What is the consequences of that risk on the business? It has got a strategic consequence, or operational, or financial, a legal, reputational, or a social and community consequence. Definitely. And what is the impact there? The impact is an explanation strategically that you are losing stakeholder support, or losing market value, or something financial, that you are losing money, operational, that production has stopped. So those two things, super important. I'm just going to close that. Then we are looking at the estimated monetary value inherently. Now, this is a very important thing, because if you are looking at that business continuity objective, if that is not achieved, what are you losing? If you are sitting without power, without electricity for 6 months, or for 3 months, or for 2 weeks, and you don't have any backup generation like solar, or a generator, or you've got a generator, but I'm not worried about diesel, and then, or fuel, and then suddenly the oil price is skyrocketing, and then there's a shortage of these things, and now your business is interrupted. So what is your turnover for the year in looking after that? Because that is your inherent estimated monetary value. Whether it is $500,000, whether it is $2 million, don't mind. It is just a peck in the sand. Just remember, this is inherently, it's a peck in the sand. Inherent risk rating. Normal, I want to say, if you're looking at the traditional way of getting to inherent risk rating, it is likelihood versus or multiply with consequence on a matrix, and then you are getting a 6 or 7 or something. I don't mind about that thing, because inherent risk rating is just a flag in the sand. It is a space where you are starting to measure things from. And usually, the people that is sitting around the table, nobody was there when you started with this, when there was no controls. So 25 as a default is good. And this is what we have said in the presentation as well. ISO doesn't matter that you are following a specific methodology. It wants to see that you can replicate it and do the same thing over. Now, immediately you've got one measurement that is gone, that nobody can interpret it differently. Yeah, but that is supposed to be, actually, it was inherently a 4. And consequences is always 5s, because consequences are never changing. It can change. It can change, except in health things where people are dying. So inherent risk rating there. Now, with this, I'm just going to leave those two open. So very important here, each one of these contributing factors need to be assessed, analyzed. That analysis. So firstly, the risk owner. The risk owner is always the head of the department. On strategic risks, it is always the CEO. So the management controls, we are starting to look here at the P square ST square methodology. And you will see there, this is what I was talking about. The P square ST square methodology, the people controls, the process controls, the system controls, the tools controls, and the technology controls. And please, if you have got, I just want to open my mind mapping tool. If you have got this in lists, fantastic, because this is supplying you with so much information that you need to be in a position to actually go and have a picking list to say that these are my people controls, these are my process controls, these are my system controls. I've got all these systems. So all of these, we are then going through each and every one, people, and for each control, there's a new line item that you can actually address people thoroughly, and processes and systems and tools and technology that you've got there. Then you are getting a control number. With that, because this is, if you're looking at optimization, you need to have connectors. And these connections between your contributing factor or the root cause analysis and your control needs to be defined. Each one has got its own number. Just want to get to this one quickly. So if you look at this, the resource universe, develop for yourself a universe. There is my universe that I'm looking at. These are my people controls. There's everything, and I can even go down and see what is my roles and responsibilities. What is everything under the recruitment and selection and onboarding and training? What do I need to have there? This is strategic management on the highest level. On processes, what is your levels of documents? Your level 1 documents, your level 2 documents, your level 3 documents. How does each one of them interconnect and support each other? How does that go over into your systems, your financial system that you've got there for accounting, payroll, expense management systems, asset management, etc., for human resources? Each one of these has got its own applicability and expansion as well. What can you have there? Then your tools, computing equipment, power backup and safety things, miscellaneous, what you've got there, shredders and paper and consumables and technology. What kind of technology do you have in the business? This is your control universe. How do you measure that? I will show you now. Because each of these controls that is now documented here, listed here, must have the evidence reference with it. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. If it's not documented in your environment, it doesn't exist. If the system is not documented, it does not exist. Then going over into the control owner. Now the control owner is different from the risk owner. The control owner could be HR, it could be somebody else there, doesn't matter. All right, and you list that, and nobody misses it that it is not for me. Then you are starting to analyze that, and with the analysis, we are going to be going here in internal control effectiveness. Now let me just go back here. This is a controlled environment with an internal control effectiveness matrix and rating, with no controls at 0, and then increments of 10% going up. And it is defined. People need to know how to use this right through the organization, because this is then going over into your internal control environment. There you are. And as you can see there, it is 0.9, it is 90%. So there's my drop down menu. I can do that, and you will see there that this is giving me a 65.71. So it is a 66% level of assurance. Now, that level of assurance is my control effectiveness. So I can take 66% of my 25, and then I will get 9. As easy as that. It's mathematical. There's no thumb sucking. There's no discussions or negotiation about likelihood and consequence. It's mathematical. It is based on effectiveness of your controls. And this is your 100% of 100%. And then the balance of your 66 is 34. And that is that is level of risk. That is level of risk. So this is my level of risk that I am sitting with, that I need to manage. And my exposure, that was 500,000 US dollars, has come down by 66%. I only need to defend $171,429 against what I have got here. So let me just close, hide this. So now you can see that the methodology is working. It's simple. Out of this, I can have the strength of what am I doing with my controls? What is being done in every department with their controls? So, and if I'm changing something here, let's say this 5, I have now implemented this 1 year, and it is done, and now it's going up to 80%, then I am having a 70% of my level of assurance, and I've got an 8 in terms of my level of risk, and that is representing 30% and 150,000 US dollars. Simple as that. Not difficult. You just need to follow the process, and then out of this, each one of these, as per the internal control effectiveness matrix, has got a rule there, an appetite and tolerance rule, that is saying all the controls are acceptable to 70%. Everything under 70% is not acceptable, and it must be treated. So immediately you are bringing in your risk treatment methodology. That needs to be done. So if we are looking at this now, you will see there that I've got that is under, and that one as well. And then in the line, if you are working with Excel spreadsheets, in the line of that one there, then the control number, the the contributing factor number, the control number, and then your risk treatment number. And you need to go and make choices about what is your treatment methodology there. Are you going to treat it, transfer it, tolerate it, terminate it, or take the opportunity? What is your action steps to increase that control effectiveness? And then if you look at the overall numbers there, the residual risk target, what is your risk target? Where do you want to be if you are looking at all of these and you are setting a minimum standard of 80%? What is that going to be if you are calculating that in terms of 80% all over? That is your target. There's your target. And then your risk appetite. Where am I hungry to take risks? And my risk tolerance, and then my action steps. How much is my estimated monetary value for my action steps, for my actions to be taken? And this means that for everything that you are doing, you've got a cost analysis there. You can use this as your business plan. You can use this as your motivation for A, B, and C. This is our risk. This is what we need to go and do. And this is the responsible person, interdependencies, your due date, and then you can have extensions and comments there. And all of this is one risk register. Very simple. Now this summarizes into your summary report. That is actually, all of these are already, you can see there, this is your risk ID, your date of evaluation, your objective there. I'm just going to hide these. So if you look at that one that we just did, now you can see my estimated monetary value inherently is so much. My inherent risk rating is 25. It is right through. You can defend it. My people controls is 85%, and I've got 5 controls there. My process controls is 63%, and I've got 5 controls there. It is not a single point of failure. It is not only one control that you are working with. My system controls, I've got 50%, and it is 2 controls. Tools, the same thing. And technologies, I've got nothing there. I need to investigate that because this is giving me the opportunity to actually investigate it. And then my level of risk, level of assurance is 65.71. My level of risk is that one. My residual exposure is that. My residual risk and my actions that I need to take is $2,000. Simple. And out of this, you go one step further and you look at what is your top 10 risks. There's my top 10 risks. There's my performance. There's my overall top 10 level of assurance and level of risk. I want to be on 80% for assurance. I am 68. I'm 12% short. I'm 12% over here. So this gives you the dashboard in understanding what needs to be done. On this one, it is specifically on the P-square, S2 square. And this is about the control effectiveness only on your people, process systems, etc. And what are their performance? I want to be 80%. Where am I? I'm not close to 80%. I'm 13, 14, 15% short. And this is my shortages dashboard that I can see. But hell, look there. I've got no tech there. I've got no tools there. Go and improve it. List it. Here you can see what is your control count. How many controls do you have? What is your control effectiveness in each of these sectors? Then your overall level of assurance and level of risk. This is a super fantastic slide, really. If you look at this, this is the GM's, the general manager or the CEO's total dashboard of all his objectives. I think there's about 22 objectives there, but he's got financial objectives. He's got business process objectives. He's got people objectives. He's got integrated processes objectives. And now this is his scorecard. His one pager that is actually saying, we are not doing great or we are doing fantastic. Or where do we need to go and determine what is going on there? And who do I need to go and address and call in? Come, my friend, let's talk about this. Because you are affecting my performance. There's your estimated monetary values in your inherent monetary value, your residual one, your actions. Now look at the disparity here. I'm defending 26 billion. This is Pula. You can make it dollars as well. I'm only asking for 22,000 Pula to actually improve this to 80% and above. Hell, man, that is a drop in the ocean, not even in a bucket. And this will improve this reds into greens. And then this is just another display. Now, what I was talking about earlier, and what I was alluded to in the presentation was this: controls. I can now say that for that environment, I had 1,581 controls that we have evaluated. There was actually 2,800 something, but they were duplicates because people don't always know the right names and using the right naming convention. So this is making that people are using different names. So we had to go and clean it up and get all the duplicates out firstly. Our performance on people is 64%, on processes overall, 63%, on systems, on technology, on tools. Okay, so who is contributing to this low figure? Okay, let's go. Is it these guys? Nope. See these guys? Not actually. See these guys? Nope. See these guys? Yes, we've got one there, one red there. We've got in this one here a lot of different colors. So it is either the information that they provided was not correct, the time that they have spent on this was not correct, was not qualitative. It is so I cannot believe in this environment that we were measuring here that anybody is under 70%. Cannot. So if I'm getting this kind of thing back, it is poor quality. Then I am looking at, look there. This one is brilliant, man. I don't have to worry about this. This doesn't give me sleepless nights. This one doesn't give me sleepless nights, and this is possibly my core business. This is not giving me sleepless nights, but I can still improve because I didn't list there. This one, oopsie. Okay. Then this one as well. So me as the CEO, I've got 3 priorities now. I've got that priority. I've got that priority. And yeah, I've got 3 priorities. That one, and I think, yeah, that one. Only 3 priorities. Very easy. Very easy. I can call those guys in and set them on a specific improvement process in terms of quality. Go and record the quality that you've got. I have supplied you with all of this, but you did not record it. You don't even acknowledge it. Go back and do it over. Improve. You've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because this, I can guarantee you, is mostly an administrative problem. This is not about resources or people or processes. This company is too mature. So this is only people's perception of risk, people's contribution to the risk process. And my guys, this is what we are talking about. And if you want to go and look at technology, I don't even want to go into, so this is our system. I just want to go to our monitoring and reporting. So out of this, you are getting 27 reports, 27 tasks outstanding, your estimated monetary value, your control effectiveness matrix. Hell, I can click on any of these. Your risk matrix that we can actually see where are you inherently and residually. How are you working with this? Are there any movement residually? How do we do this? And you can see there that this is now, it is live on the system. This is a demo system, but it's live. This one as well. There's my risk register. Done. There's my top 5. Come. There's my top 5. Don't have to go and worry about it. There's my top 10. There's it. Can go and see it. I can see what is my performance matrix. Now I can see here on my performance matrix, wow, I need to be in the green. Why are these in the yellows and some of them are in the reds? That is not even done. So now you can start working on this. You know exactly where to work. You don't have to go and analyze for hours. It's done. Task outstanding. I can see who is not doing their work, who is risk appetite, everything. List of the controls. There's my controls. I can give you all the controls, and we can even drill into each one of those that you can see where is my problem. Because it's all about decision making. It's all about making sure that what you are doing are actually working for the business. Sorry for my 7 minutes. I'm going to be 3 minutes. So in my closing thought, I'm going to say 6.1 is the heartbeat of risk-based ISO. You've seen it now. I've demonstrated it for you on an Excel spreadsheet, on a Power BI, on a system. It is, how are you empowered? How can you drive the business? Or do you want to be the CEO that is swimming in this murky waters, but you must find a diamond or gold under you that is in the reach of your hands. It is in your reach, but you cannot see it because you have murkied the water. You have muddied the water. It ensures the organization does not merely understand its environment, but acts intelligently with it. How do you use the environment to your advantage? And ISO does not expect zero risk. Absolutely not. We want to see risk. We want to see opportunities. Because if we see risk, the question is, how do you make decisions? How do you own the actions? It is not only about, okay, I am owning it and now it is done. Nope. There must be continual improvement and continual learning. So on that point, as I said to you, 15:08, I'm going to be about 8 minutes, 10 minutes over. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? No questions. Okay. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, it's not a problem. It's good. So for the people that has attended here, yes, Tanash, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So for the people that has attended here, you are getting the bonus of your life. If you are asking us, we will send you that risk register that I have shown you. Everything programmed already. Done. It's yours. Only for you 4 that is here, or 5 that is here, or people that is in the waiting room. Only for you. Bargain of your life. On that point, I want to say thank you very much. We will send out something for you tomorrow or Monday. I've been asked by the PECB to conduct a webinar for the PECB next week Thursday, the 21st. I think it's next week Thursday. Yes, it is next week Thursday, the 21st, about business continuity and the effects of strategic management in Africa. So we will send out that for you if you want to sign up. Otherwise, we are seeing you at the next one in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, guys. Enjoy. Bye-bye.